Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates. 1, 2, 3, 4, go. Nobody really thought much about anything. Nobody thought too hard about anything. For many years, Mick Mars was the quiet backbone of Mötley Crüe. The man who let his guitar do the talking while crazy stuff happened around him. He never needed the spotlight. He wasn't flashy or loud, but when he finally spoke at 74, fans weren't ready for what he said. What started as a calm retirement from touring quickly made people confused. His picture disappeared from ads. His name was barely mentioned, and just like that someone else stepped in. No party, no explanation. Then a quiet move behind the scenes sent shockwaves through the music world. Not a meltdown, not a rant, but a carefully planned response that showed something deeper had been going on all along. Because the cracks didn't start when he left the stage, they were already there under the surface waiting to be seen. And once they were, the story of Mötley Crüe began to look very different. Let's take a closer look. The quiet builder behind Mötley Crüe. Before the leather, the eyeliner, and the big concert lights, Mick Mars was just a kid from Indiana named Robert Deal. Broke, stubborn, and crazy about music. Long before anyone screamed his name, he spent almost 20 years jumping between unknown California bar bands, always getting passed over, always starting again. But it was those failures, their rejection, the hard work that shaped him. When most would have quit, he made his style into something special, heavy, gritty, and based on blues. Not flashy, just real. By 1981, when Mötley Crüe was born, it wasn't the wild look or the crazy attitude that gave the band its sound. It was Mick. While the others drank, fought, and made headlines, he stayed quiet, focused, and careful. And when someone said they looked like a motley-looking crew, it was Mick who heard something good. That phrase became the name and the brand that would define them. But Mars was never just a co-founder. He was the anchor, the expert, the one who cared more about sound than drama. While the rest of the band chased trends, he stuck to what he knew. Hard riffs and tight solos. Songs like Kickstart My Heart and Dr. Feelgood didn't just happen. They were carved out by a man who treated his guitar like a weapon and a lifeline. And even as the band went crazy through excess and headlines, Mick was always the first to arrive at the studio and the last to leave. But that quiet consistency, that refusal to play the fame game, it came at a cost, and soon it would become part of their liaison. He found himself on the outside looking in, the constant pain no one saw. What most fans didn't know, and what the band rarely talked about, was that Mick Mars had been fighting his body for most of his life. At just 17, he was told he had ankylosing spondylitis, a rare back disease that slowly sticks the spine bones together, turning flexibility into constant pain and movement into agony. For someone whose job needed standing for hours with a heavy guitar hanging over his shoulder, it was a quiet war he fought daily. But he never used it as an excuse. In 2004, he had spinal fusion surgery. Metal rods were put into his back just so he could stay upright. By all accounts, the pain was terrible. And yet for over 40 years, he kept showing up. Every album, every tour, every photo shoot. No complaints, no breaks. Engineers say he was often the only one in the studio actually playing live. While others used backing tracks or studio tricks, Mick came prepared, scribbled notes in hand, guitar strapped in, ready to record for real. Even backstage, he was different. No scandals, no arrests, no stunts. Just a man with his head down, surviving one show at a time. But over time, the pain caught up with him. And when he finally told the band he couldn't keep touring, it should have been a moment of respect, maybe even thanks. Instead, it became the turning point that changed everything. Something didn't add up. In October 2022, Mick Mars made it official. He was stepping away from touring, saying health problems made it impossible to keep up with the band's high-energy shows. His statement was calm, evenness. He made it clear he wasn't quitting the band, just the road. At first, fans respected it. After everything, he'd push through. No one questioned why he'd finally take a step back. But then things started to feel off. Almost right away, Mötley Crüe announced a replacement, guitarist John 5. There was no mention of Mars staying involved in the band, no statement about him still being a member, just a quick swap and a strange silence. Tour posters were suddenly updated. Mars was nowhere to be seen. His name didn't appear in press releases. His picture was removed from ads like he'd never been part of the band at all. To longtime fans, it didn't feel like a respectful transition. It felt like a quiet eraser. And behind the scenes, something else was stirring. Because while Mick stayed silent publicly, he had already started meeting with legal counsel. Whatever had happened, whatever was being kept under wraps, he wasn't going to let it slide, pushed out, or stepping back. To the public, it looked like a personal health decision. But behind closed doors, Mick Mars was starting to feel like something very different was happening. He'd made it clear he wasn't leaving Mötley Crüe, just stepping away from the stage. In his mind, he was still a founding member, still owed his rightful share, still part of the band's legacy. But the way things played out told a different story. Rehearsals carried on without him. New merch rolled out with his face missing. Bandmates posted cryptic messages about fresh energy and team spirit, but not one of them mentioned Mick by name. No thanks, no tribute, nothing. And the replacement, John 5, wasn't just a new guitarist. He was already close to several crew members, especially Nicky 6. To some fans, it felt less like a fill-in and more like a plan. Even worse, insiders claimed Mick had been left out of major decisions for years. He didn't attend financial meetings. He didn't get involved in business ventures. And gradually his influence and his vote had started to disappear. He was still legally part of the band, but from the outside, it looked like they'd moved on without him. And that's when Mick Mars made a choice, one he'd never made before in his career. He wasn't going to stay silent. The move that broke the silence. On April 6, 2023, Mick Mars broke his silence not with a statement to fans but with a legal move that shook the rock world. He filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court. And suddenly, everything fans thought they understood about his exit started to fall apart. Inside the documents were claims no one expected. Mick said he'd been gradually pushed out, not just from the stage, but from ownership, profits, and decision-making. According to him, the band had quietly reduced his stake in Mötley Crüe from 25% to just 5% without his agreement. Even more disturbing were the claims about how they tried to prove he no longer fit. Mick said he was forced to take performance tests as if 4 decades of dedication weren't enough. He called it degrading, a humiliation. But what truly caught fans off guard were the accusations about the band's live shows. According to Mick, much of what fans had been watching on stage wasn't even live. He claimed Vince Neil often lip-synced and Tommy Lee used pre-recorded drum tracks. Mick said he was the only one playing every note, and that his refusal to fake it made him stand out in the worst way. In response, the band denied everything. They claimed Mick could no longer perform at the level required, that he was forgetting songs, falling behind and dragging rehearsals down. But fans weren't so quick to pick sides, because to many, it didn't feel like a creative decision. It felt like something else. And it wasn't over yet. Mars fights back through music. While Mötley Crüe fired back with denials and social media spin, Mick Mars didn't rant. He didn't beg. He didn't try to win the public with interviews or drama. Instead, he did the one thing he's always done better than anyone else. He picked up his guitar. In February 2024, without warning, he dropped his first ever solo album, The Other Side of Mars. A raw, angry, and unfiltered collection of songs that sounded nothing like Crüe and everything like him. The opening track, Loyal to the Lie, hit like a warning shot. Heavy riffs, gritty vocals, lyrics that didn't name names but didn't have to. Critics immediately pointed to it as a direct response to everything he'd been through. But this wasn't just a side project. Mick had built an elite lineup of musicians and teamed up with legendary producer Michael Wagoner, known for his work with Ozzy Osbourne and Metallica. The album blended industrial metal, grunge, and hard rock, a sound fare more aggressive than fans were used to hearing from him, and it worked. Within days, the album climbed the iTunes rock charts and cracked Billboard's top 20. Fans flooded forums and social media calling it one of the best rock records of the year, not because of hype, but because of heart. Mick Mars hadn't just made a statement. He made an album that proved he never needed the band to define him. A legend reborn at 74. Before all this, Mick Mars was the silent pillar of Mötley Crüe, present on every album, playing every riff, but rarely getting the credit. While the spotlight went to scandals and showmen, he stayed in the background, quietly carrying the weight. Now the roles have flipped. When The Other Side of Mars dropped, it didn't just make a noise, it made a statement. Within days, it hit number 5 on the iTunes rock chart and cracked Billboard's top 20. Not because of a flashy rollout or viral campaign, but because fans actually listened, and they connected deeply. Critics who once ignored him were now praising the album as the most honest and personal work of his career. Kerrang called it a sonic punch to the past. Loudwire said it was proof that the heart of Crüe had always been Mars. And unlike his former band, this time it was all him. Every riff, every tone, every direction. No marketing machine, no distractions. Just raw music and real emotion. For the first time, Mick wasn't just a name on a lineup. He was the name on the cover. Even more striking was how the music world responded. Younger artists began citing him as a blueprint for longevity. Veteran guitarists praised his tone, and forums that used to debate Crüe's frontmen were now filled with fans calling Mars the only one who ever really mattered. He went from being treated like a fading member of a legacy act to a respected solo artist who was finally being heard. He may no longer be standing on stage under the lights, but in the eyes of many, Mick Mars had never stood taller. Where things stand now, Ace off mid-2025, the legal battle between Mick Mars and Mötley Crüe remains unresolved. Negotiations continue quietly behind the scenes, but no settlement has been made public. The band carries on touring with their new lineup, while avoiding any direct mention of the man who helped build their empire. Meanwhile, Mick Mars is moving forward, not with bitterness, but with purpose. He's already working on a second solo album rumored to dive deeper into experimental sounds, electronic, ambient, industrial. He's collaborating with a rising female artist from the alternative scene, though her name remains under wraps. It's not just another record. It's a reinvention, and it's all happening on his own terms. Mars has also ruled out a return to touring, focusing instead on studio work, physical therapy, and the only kind of spotlight he's ever cared about, the one that shines through the music itself. He now lives quietly in Nashville, far from the chaos, but his influence is louder than ever. At major festivals like Hellfest and Aftershock, new generations of bands name drop him as a key influence. YouTube channels and podcasts dissect his solos, his tone, his choices, not just as nostalgia but as education. And something remarkable has happened. Mick Mars, once seen as the quiet one, has become the most respected voice to come out of Mötley Crüe. Not for drama, not for theatrics, but for honesty, for consistency, for never chasing trends, only truth. He may not stand on stage anymore, but he stands taller than ever before. In the end, he didn't just walk away from the band, he rose above it. And while Mötley Crüe keeps playing the part, Mick Mars is finally playing for himself. So did Mick Mars finally break free? Or did the band break something that can't be repaired? His story raises a question every music fan should ask when the spotlight fades. Who is really holding it up the whole time? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Was Mick Mars pushed out, or did he step into something bigger? If you enjoyed this story and want more untold truths from the legends of rock, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. It helps us keep digging deep and telling the stories others won't. Thanks for watching, and remember, the quiet ones often have the loudest legacy.